Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban. I'm a certified executive coach. What I do is I help driven, evolving, and emerging leaders like yourself remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Today we'll be talking about impact in the workplace and potentially improving income and your influence with Clara, and wait until you hear more about that. If you are just tuning into the podcast and live show and you've never seen or heard my voice before, my name is Erin Urban. You can find more about me at coachyurban.com. Please don't forget the podcast, which is live on all major channels, including a few that I've never heard of. So if you're just tuning in today, I'd love to welcome you to the Career Coffee Chat live show and podcast. Please say hi, say where you're from, say your name. And if you have any questions as we proceed throughout the conversation, just know you are included in this conversation. I want to hear your questions. Come on in. Let's have a great conversation. Let's show up, have some questions, and have a good discussion about what we're talking about today. Now, what we are talking about today is career confidence and diversity superpowers, and how to leverage your unique gifts to elevate your career. Now, this is number 3 in the Forbes Coaches Council special summer series. And this live event is, of course, available as a podcast. And my special guest today is Clara Angelina Diaz Anderson. She's a master certified coach, and she will be talking about how to leverage both authenticity and diversity to help you thrive in your career. Some golden nuggets we'll be talking about today is how to unlock your authentic career confidence, overcome roadblocks to authenticity, and own your diversity as a superpower. Because as we all know, diversity isn't just skin deep. So I'm really excited to have you join us today and tuning in for a deeper conversation about what it takes to own your unique gifts and show up 100% in your strength zone. So whether you're tuning in live or watching the replay later, please do put your comments, questions. I want you to show up and join us for a great conversation. If you're just tuning in, say hi, say where you're from. I'd love to welcome you to the show. Now, Clara is awesome. She's a bilingual certified master coach with a specialty in executive leadership coaching for women of color. Now, a little bit more about her. It goes much more than that. She's also the author of the book and self-coaching program, Create Your Best Year One Day at a Time. She works with some of the best in the business leadership development industry, with the likes of Harvard Business School and NAACP. Without further ado, I am excited to introduce Clara to the show. Great to see you.
It's great to see you, Erin. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So, I gotta know, because inquiring minds want to know, what was the catalyst for you to get into this deeper work as a master certified coach? What was that? Because there's usually something in there that spark that ignited that transition to be a master certified coach.
For sure. Well, first and foremost, I was born in the Dominican Republic, and ever since I decided, my parents decided for me that I was going to migrate to the United States with my siblings. I wanted to make the absolute most of the sacrifice, literally, that my parents were making for me. And so I decided to become a master coach after being a coach, because the first question that people would ask me when I would be in speaking engagements or giving workshops was, a person that looked like me would come up to me and say, "How did you become a coach?" And it was literally my dream to then be able to help others become coaches and to, increase the face of coaching and bring more diverse people of color, women of color into this amazing industry.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to say hi to Gloria, who's tuning in from Houston, Texas. And be sure to say hi when you hop on. I'd love to welcome you to the show. And if you have any questions, we're here to help you out today. So, Clara, backing up a little bit, what got you into coaching? You made that transition to be a master certified coach, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with that process, is not an insignificant transition. Okay, it does require a lot of time and energy and dedication to become master certified coach. But how did you transition into coaching? What inspired you to do that? What was going
Yeah. Well, I started my career, Erin. That's a great question. I started my career in corporate America. My first corporate job was with Bank of America, and at the young age of 18, I had my first salary job. I worked in the banking world, and I continued to climb the corporate ladder. But I feel very empty inside, which a lot
on?
of people could probably, that are watching, could probably relate, to being told that, a title and a salary, that you check the boxes and that, that's it for you, that, that's what you're made of.
Mhm.
But I had a near-death experience that really brought me to really question,
Mm.
why am I here? Why am I still on Earth? And that journey took me to this period of my life where I started to paint.
Yeah.
And I, within that, in that artist community, I met a coach.
Mhm.
And working with this coach, I started achieving things that I didn't think I would achieve until I was maybe in my 60s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something very simple was that when I started painting, I wanted to have an art show. And I thought that
Mhm.
you had to go to art school, and that there was like all these in my mind. I thought there were like all these steps that you had
Mhm.
to take in order to have that dream. But he made me see, working with him, like there is there's an alternate path to what you want, and that one, that I deserved what I dreamed and what I desired,
Right.
and that there was an alternate path, and that the resources were literally right there for me, and that all I needed to do was just go for it. And it amazed me. It amazed me that there was a person, I didn't even know that there was this thing called a coach. Um, that I was like, oh my God, I want to do that for people. I want to I want to give people permission to say, I want that, to be able to voice their desires, to be able to be intentional and to be active creators of their lives.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it just brings chills to me when I talk about it, because I was the product of coaching, and I just wanted to do that for others.
That's a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that because
Of
it's
course.
very true. I mean, part of the reason I decided out of coaching or consulting to focus on coaching was because I transformed my life based on the coaching and mentoring I received. And
Correct.
I hadn't received that coaching and mentoring at a very pivotal point in my career, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have written a best-selling book. I wouldn't have a live show. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't be helping people. It would not be the way it is now. I'd probably still be in the corporate ladder. And that's someone's path. That's your path. There's not neither right nor wrong except for the intention we attach to it. Okay. But when you're called to do something and you realize that you have the ability, the tools at your fingertips to help elevate people, that's just, there aren't really words for that.
Seriously, there really isn't. It's just, a joy and a bliss, and a true honor, to be able to support people in that way. I mean, I'm overjoyed by the work that I do.
That's wonderful. And that, I'm sure you'll agree with me. When you get the success notes and the hey, this worked, or you wouldn't believe this happened, or I see, and you just have that feeling, and there's nothing, I mean, you can't even describe it. It's just like it just makes your whole day.
Yeah, yeah. For me, Erin, for me is that when you see your clients achieve so much more than they even thought they could.
Right. Exactly.
And and they're just extremely surprised, and you're like, I knew it. I just yeah, there's a dream beyond the dream, and
Hmm.
a coach can just help you be open and receptive, right, to the best that the universe has for you. And I feel extremely privileged to do this work.
That's wonderful. I want to welcome Carnicia for tuning in from Spring, Texas. Good to see you, Carnicia. And this is a good segue or conversation. You recently completed a project that's quite transformational for a major
Yes.
organization. And part of that was helping those individuals achieve and understand their potential and achieve that from a lens of diversity.
Yes.
Now, can you share a little bit about what was that at just high level, and most importantly, what was your key takeaway from that?
For sure, for sure. So this organization, it's like one of the biggest financial companies in the United States, and their biggest issue was that their high level associates of color were leaving them. They weren't, like they were maybe reaching the level of manager, but not going into the C-suite. Quite honestly, and they were losing. Like losing your people is like the biggest loss that an
Mm-hmm.
organization can have. And so this program that I was a part of and coaching these individuals basically took them through a process of being able to see one is like grow their self-awareness and be able to see their value, be able to truly express their value in economic terms, but also to be able to communicate, in ways where their ideas could truly be received,
Mm-hmm.
to also learn to manage up, and ultimately to be able to coach their employees, their managers, the people that they work with, and be able to have that communication that is clear and concise, and that really helps to be effective in the workplace, and then for them to be able to feel that they are valued and that they are expressing their value,
Mm-hmm.
because quite honestly, it's like and this is the organization's attempt, right, to wanting to create an inclusive workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we were discussing earlier, Erin, that coaching is one of those tools, right, that really helps in this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is one of those tools that helps organizations to be equitable and to be inclusive.
Right, right. Now, I want to capture some of your key takeaways and what you're thinking of, moving forward, having that future focus. But before we get there, I'd like to just touch on briefly what are some of, or maybe not briefly, maybe in detail, what are some of the challenges you see for those people who identify with being diverse?
Yeah.
And what maybe are some just fairly straightforward tactics that maybe some just a checkbox or a step or something that they can start looking at how to leverage that as their superpower and how to own that impact and gift that they truly do have.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the major challenges, Erin, is the workplace itself,
Mm.
not being a place that really that is inclusive, or that that is really open to diversity.
Mhm.
Those kind of workplaces who say like, yeah, they subscribe to equal opportunity employment because that's what the law says, but
And that's such, I'm sorry. As someone who helps people in career transition advancement specifically, it's just that's not true.
exactly, it's not true. So that's one of the major challenges, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
your workplace is not inclusive. Like you don't
It's
you
not.
don't you don't
You
feel
think
like
it
you
is?
belong.
It's
Right.
not.
You're already there. You're like, I'm the only person that, whatever, whatever that category of diversity is for you, either, it be your race, or, your gender, or your age, whatever that is. Um, your workplace is not inclusive. So what is one thing that you can do, right? One thing that you can do is one. And so what that does, right, is that it ignites in you, the famous imposter syndrome. It makes you feel like you're there by chance, that it's not because of your merit that you're there. It makes you, there's a whole slew of feelings
Right.
that come up. And so one is just acknowledging the fact that you're not crazy, that maybe the environment itself, right, is not really taking you in. So if that's the case, like, is there some is there an ally, right? Is there a person in with power, right, that can help you, that can speak for you, that you can connect with? Is there another person like yourself? Can you go to HR and speak about your concerns? Because sometimes there are things in place that maybe we just don't know about, or maybe HR is waiting for someone to give feedback. And that comes at a cost. You may or may not be taken seriously. So that's one thing. But the other thing that I want people to consider is that diversity. It's a hot topic right now, right? This diversity, equity, and inclusion, because at this time, especially with COVID and with the racial reckoning in this country, there's a demand for organizations to really look deeply at their diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so if you identify as a person who is diverse, know that companies are looking for you, number one. So you're an asset. And number two is also to not be afraid of really owning, your talents, your capabilities, who you are, everything that you've had to overcome in order to be where you are. That is an asset. Your obstacles could, the fact that you overcame those obstacles are a huge strength. And so just owning that, right? One is recognizing the environment. Two, recognize that you are not crazy. Looking to see, right, who is that ally? Who is like what's already in place for me, right? And then seeing how your everything that you've had to overcome to be here is an asset for you, instead of thinking of yourself as less than.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for those of you tuning in or watching the replay later or listening to the podcast, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced, the diversity comes in many different flavors. And we were talking before the show, it's not just the obvious things. It can be neurodiversity. It can be very subtle diversity. Take, for example, as a female who was more of a dominant persona in my industry in my early career, it was, when I moved to Texas, a shock for them. my how I presented myself was not what the cultural norm was, right? So I was very much an outlier, and I was punished for that until I figured out how to adjust and also own my impact and own my own unique gifts and strengths. But I'd love to hear from you, those of you who are tuning in either now or later. What are some of the challenges you've experienced if you identify with being a diverse individual? What are some of the things that what's coming up for you, what roadblocks you're experiencing? Because just to be really honest, and we were chatting about this before the show started as well, part of the problem we have, particularly in, I would have to say, Europe and America, Canada, etc., well, in general, really, no matter where you are, what country, but the workplace as we know it, specifically corporate cultures, was created by a certain demographic. Okay.
Let's call it men. Let's call it how it is.
Typically white, unless you're
white
in
men.
an American country or something like that. But it was male. It's male dominated. So I can say I have been in the position of having to make tough choices because I knew I was going to a very male-dominated field as an architect when I left school. What is the best path for me to achieve what I want without constantly getting knocked down and go, oh, well, you're just, a woman, go design windows or fluff pillows. That's what I was told. I was told I was a pillow fluffer. That also has a very bad connotation, by the way, for those of you who are a little bit older. But yeah, and it was offensive, and I went through a lot of challenges to make my way in my career. But for those of you, we have to understand, okay, the context. We're now taking apart those structures. Very strong change cycle. A lot of opportunity right now. What can you, as a diverse individual, own? What's your unique gift? Because you mentioned that you're not crazy. You're also beautifully unique. Can you see that as a gift?
Right. You know, Erin, there's a term called internalized oppression, right?
Mm,
Where so there's all these systems that have been this workspace, right, that have been created by predominantly white men,
mm-hmm.
right, where that has been set up so that those individuals who are not that don't thrive. And so many of us are, that go into the workplace, just think that we have to just work harder. And, if only I get that next degree,
Mm-hmm.
or,
Another certification.
yeah, that next certification, if I just get there earlier and, and I just smile, and dress like everyone else, but know that like that comes at an emotional cost. And that there is like one is just to recognize that that is there, and I speak from personal experience because I was that person who thought that if I just got that next degree, and if I just dressed nicer and I worked a little harder, and then I feel like the harder I worked, the more work I was given. There's these unspoken rules of work, that knowing the right person, making sure that you're able to communicate in a certain way, to make sure that your work is spoken about when you're not in the room, like
Right.
right, who's that sponsor that's going to be speaking about you when the next big project comes up, um, and then like just owning the fact that what, I am doing great work, although I'm not being celebrated. I mean, that's not cool, right? Like, let's change that.
Mm-hmm.
But you, like, being strong internally can make a very big difference, because the other side of this too is like it's energetically as well. If you can own the fact that you're like, I do amazing things, I have overcome amazing odds to be here, I know my work is great. I mean, the numbers show it, the data shows it.
Mm-hmm.
And you if you can truly own that inside, you are going to you are going to feel more confident to be able to maybe ask the CEO for lunch, or have a conversation, or be able
Right.
to like craft your value narrative, and when they come to ask you about it, so what are you up to, you'll know exactly what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And like those things that are put in play, you put those things in play because you feel that you're worthy. I mean, there's many levels to, yeah, right, to this, but just owning that can make such a big difference, for those of us who feel othered, or who are not the majority.
Right. Right. And I'm going to say, regardless of who you are, human beings in general tend to struggle when it comes to owning your impact
Mm,
in general. But when you feel othered, as you put it, you feel like you are the one, the odd person out, just different, you're not fitting in for whatever, you don't see other people like you, or people who act like you, or believe like you believe, whatever that is. Yes, it can be a struggle. So, it's interesting you mentioned, really owning that, and empowering yourself internally, because when you lift yourself up internally, you start to have very different conversations. You
correct.
start showing up very different. Because when you feel disempowered, that's when it's easier, regardless of who you are or what your diversity component is, then it's easier to be defensive, or maybe not be able to have that conversation, or have the forehead smack later. Oh, I should have said this. I didn't,
Mhm.
because I didn't, and not feel like, well, I just need to be grateful for having a job. No,
No, no.
no, own that. And that's for anybody listening. You own your impact.
Right.
Because the conversations are very different. Your actions are very different. Because then what you're doing is neurologically, you're supporting the right outcomes.
Correct.
Internal narrative is in line with your goals versus the other way.
Correct. Correct. Yes, like in what you said, about you're neurologically supporting the outcomes that you want, and so I think what a big message that of you asked, Aaron, what can a person do, is to really be intentional about, like, what are my goals, what are my values, like what kind of organization do I want to be a part of? What kind of mission do I want to contribute to? And not just feel like the opportunities, like I see people running into this a lot in my coaching work, where they feel like the opportunity is out there.
Right.
The opportunity is out there, and if someone would just give me an opportunity. And I want people to know, like, that are watching this, that you are the opportunity. You are what people are looking for. So if you can see yourself as the opportunity and practice being able to really express your value with asset language, right? To talk about what you have done as opposed to what you haven't done. Right? What you can do as opposed to what you can't do.
Right.
Especially, for us women, that sometimes it's so hard for us to really to talk about ourselves. Right? We're like, oh, you know what? My work will speak for itself. No, it won't. No, it won't. Oh, your work will not speak for itself. Right?
And typically you'll be given more work the harder you work. That's
right.
Because you're not speaking up. You're not saying, oh, I'd really love to lead project, or I'm really looking for this. You're not articulating your goals. And when you don't speak up for yourself, people just assume you want more work. Oh, she's a really hard worker. She'll get it done. Let's get to
it. Right. So let's just normalize speaking your value. If you've never done it's called the value narrative about yourself, you can Google that. There's plenty of steps to do that. You can contact me or contact Aaron to help you with that. But that's so much of the work that I do, is really helping people really bring out that what I call that authentic confidence in themselves, and to even look back at their lineage and see what did your mother have to do in order for you to be in the place that you are? What did your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, right, have to do in order for you to stand where you are, right? And how can you become their wildest dream? They are what you want. You are what they wish they could have had. So it's and that's one way of overcoming that imposter syndrome, because quite honestly, I work with organizations, and that's really hard work to do. That takes a long time to change environments, and I think one more direct a more direct and effective way for people to change is by changing themselves.
Yes, and that's where all true change starts.
Yeah.
Anyway, is inside. Now, Gloria had something interesting to say. Thank you, Gloria, for that contribution. She said, I learned I don't give myself enough credit. And she finds support groups, particularly women, be very empowering. And it's interesting she mentioned that, because one of my good friends mentions her personal board of directors. And it is a group of supportive women who are empowering and lifting each other up. Different industries, doesn't have to be within your workplace, but really connecting with these individuals, sharing stories, giving each other guidance, support, and helping remind you that you matter and you have value and you can show up in that space. And to have someone to talk to that kind of gets where you're coming from is very, very helpful.
Absolutely. Creating community is very, very important in order to sustain your confidence. And also to help you move further in your career, because as we know, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yes, it is who you know, and how much of an ally they are.
Correct.
that's another thing women tend to struggle with more than ambitious men is leveraging their network. Because we tend to be more emotion driven. We don't want to be in a position on someone. So we're like, oh, well, I don't leverage this. A leverage relationship is a little bit more transactional. A lot of women feel uncomfortable about that.
Yeah.
So if you don't know more about that, feel free to PM either one of us or look it up. There's a little bit more about what is a leveraged relationship? What does that look like? How can you leverage your network? And it's loosely termed. It would be, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but that's basically how it works. You're showing up in a space for someone so they can show up in a space for you.
Right. Within in my coaching certification training, I teach this one exercise called my circle of influence, where I have people literally make a list of like, who are the people that I know who love and respect me? And who needs to know me? Like, who needs to know that I exist? And how can I create a value narrative and an ask to asking the people that already love and respect me to introduce me to those who I can help. Right. And so, and I think for women, we need to come a little bit more from this place and normalize, like I said, again, like owning your value. Like, what is it that you bring to the table? What's the difference that you're making? What's the difference that you're hoping to make? Because then it's genuine. It's just saying, look, like, for me, it's like, I'm a coach and I work with, with diverse women. I help them increase their confidence. Like, who do you know who can use my help? And it's super genuine and it's real. It's not, it doesn't have to be, that term salesy or anything like that. It's just, I know I'm great. I know I do something that's transformational. Like, who do you know who's in pain, who could use my help? So just, maybe just changing your mindset around how you engage others could be a game changer sometimes.
Right. And understanding that what you do is empowering and important to other people.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking that it's you're imposing upon someone for making an ask, keep in mind that what you do has value. And I would love to hear from those of you tuning in. Do you feel like you have enough of that goals focused value narrative in your workplace or in your life, coaching, career life, whatever that looks like for you, depending on whether you're an entrepreneur or otherwise? The saying says awareness and culture of accepting the other opinion, good listening, and choosing words of the conversation, distinguish conversation, promote authenticity. Yes, very, very eloquently put. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, and speaking of conversations, we talked a little bit about how you're introducing the coaching mindset to include and encourage and elevate DE&I within these workplaces. Right. And you had a few takeaways from that. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts and how maybe the folks that are tuning in can leverage some of these gold nuggets to help themselves understand, okay, how can I leverage a coaching mindset to help myself elevate and empower my career and life existence?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the one of the first pillars of coaching is being a really good listener. Right. And being a good listener means that you have heard what the other person said and you can paraphrase what they said. And most of us who are not trained coaches or trained in, formally trained in communication don't know this. But you being able to say, what I heard you say, Erin, was, and repeat it back to you, with some of the exact words that you use, as this gentleman has just mentioned, literally builds rapport, like instant rapport, with the other individual, right? Which within a diverse workplace can really help two people who are completely different, really feel the sense of connection. Right. And when you feel connection, you're more open to working with this person and being more innovative. And so that's one thing is just like engaging that active listening skill, right? Where you're listening, not when you're not just hearing, but you're listening and then you're paraphrasing what that person said, and also for clarity. to make sure that you understand what the person is saying and that the person understands what you're saying. So that's one thing. And that you're able to also not, like, I don't want to say the word take control of the situation of the conversation, but be more mindful of the narrative of, of like what is what is going on here, what is being said, what's being understood. So just really taking, words are powerful.
Yes.
And so meeting someone, listening to someone and repeating back to them what they said is neurologically comforting
It
to the
is.
other person.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is when you're working with someone and taking on this coaching mindset, right? The one of the other pillars of coaching, coaching assumes that the other person has within them the answers to the questions that they're the answers to their questions, that they don't need to just be told, that there is wealth and richness within them that needs to come out. And that you hired someone because they're smart, because they're brilliant, and
Right.
like, let them be brilliant. And so coaching can really help someone, can help you bring brilliance out in others, even in your supervisors. So that's, this idea of managing up. So if you are the kind of person that can help another person bring out their brilliance, even though you're not called a coach, but you have coaching skills,
Right.
that can really take you further in your organization.
Yeah, and also coaching, it encourages neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the ability to form, accept, and maybe implement new ideas and leading into innovation.
Right.
And what's interesting about that is when we start considering that coaching encourages neuroplasticity and agility, mental agility, then we ourselves start to be able to make more of the unconscious conscious, become more aware. We can improve ourselves, how we show up, and then therefore influence and empower others without necessarily, quote unquote, having to do it. Like, it's not an effort. Influence truly is how you show up. It's your credibility factor that leads into influence. But yeah, so this is really exciting work, and it sounds like you've got some ideas about how to leverage the coaching mindset. So becoming, adopting some of the abilities of a coach, the tools of coaching to help individuals elevate their careers, elevate how they show up in the workplace, and empower themselves and others. So that's huge.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's really exciting. Actually, it's a really exciting time for the industry itself, because not like one. So I work with two different buckets of people, right? Which is those who are already within organizations and they're like, Clara, like I've hit a roadblock and I need to figure out, okay, do I leave this organization, or how can I grow? How can I change myself in order improve myself in order to grow here? And so coaching is one of those tools, is saying, look, like, you don't have to disclose the fact that you're a coach, but you can take on coaching skills and become that leader that you're looking for. And that's really at the core of my mission, is you becoming the leader you seek.
Right.
And then there's those individuals who, want a piece of that, the pie of that multi-billion-dollar industry that you and I are part of, and are saying, I have amazing expertise. People come to me for help and advice all the time. Like, how can I leverage this opportunity and really help others? How can I help others help themselves? And so I work with those two buckets of people. And both for me are super important, because, as I said in the beginning, coaching, I see coaching as a tool to really drive equity and inclusion in the workplace and also in the business space.
Right, right. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments. Feel free to pop them in the chat. We'd love to help you and make sure that we can help you thrive and empower your career focus and where you want to go with your life and your career. So what's next steps for you, Clara? What's on the horizon?
What's on the horizon? I have some really exciting projects this September. I have some really exciting executive coaching projects. Working with leaders of color here in the Boston area. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also a business advisor, so also helping some minority business owners grow their business. But the thing that I am most excited about, my bliss, is teaching coaching and increasing the coaching workforce. And so I have my next coaching certification that's happening in September, and then an amazing network that I am creating with 65 plus coaches that I have certified, where we are growing our practice and our ability and our businesses, and referring work to each other and transforming lives together. So I'm really excited about all those things.
Well, that's wonderful. It sounds like you've got a lot of very joyful things in front of you. That's wonderful to see you thrive. And when we thrive, our clients thrive, everybody benefits from that experience.
Exactly.
Well, it was lovely having you on the show. We learned a lot. This has been very insightful and also, I think, uplifting. I don't know about any of you who've tuned in, but I certainly feel like where we're headed, because we're in such a strong change cycle right now. There are so many unknowns. Are we going back to work? Are we not? What type of model is it? How could I, things are different now. Expectations are different. Conversations are different. What can I say? What I cannot say? How do I show up? There's so many unknowns. And quite frankly, some of us haven't been in group gathering in over a year. So we're not quite sure how to navigate that, along with anything else that's going on. So giving people a roadmap of how to advance their careers, elevate their experience overall, and empower themselves is tremendous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Erin, thank you so much for having me on the show. And if folks go on my website, which is my full name, I offer a free chapter of my book, where I guide you to taking 3 powerful actions every day towards what you want, towards owning your value, towards your desires. And if you take anything from this conversation, I really want you to put pen to paper and start writing down your value narrative, what you bring to the table. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful closing statement. And for all of you tuning in now and later watching the replay, keep elevating, friends. Until next time.
Bye-bye.